Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, and today we have another interesting guest. This is Dino Lourenco. He is a district sales manager with a very well-known technology company in the medical devices and pharmaceutical space. Dino is going to be talking to us from the pharmaceutical space, as he's a district sales manager there in the Neuroscience division. And we're going to get into what candidates need to pay attention to when they're trying to get a pharmaceutical sales position, what he looks for when he wants to bring someone on to his team. We talk about his career, of course, and we also talk about being or transitioning from sales rep to sales manager and what you need to consider and what you should do to prepare and the different perspectives on both sides. So stay tuned for this episode. It's a great episode. And again, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. Dino, how are we doing today?
I'm doing well. Good morning, Sammy. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. No complaints. First, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Today, we have with us Dino Lourenco. He works with Janssen, and he's a district sales manager there in the Neuroscience division. So, Dino, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, like you said, I'm a district manager with Janssen. I do have to say up front that what we're going to discuss in my part of my discussion here is just my sole opinion, right? So not the opinion of Janssen or Johnson & Johnson as a whole. So get that kind of policy compliance reminder out of the way.
Right.
But so I'm a district sales manager with J&J and Janssen. Been here for about 12 years, and in the neuroscience division for about a year and a half.
Excellent. And, you've been in the industry, you understand it. How does neuroscience differ from primary care pharmaceutical sales?
Well, specifically, I mean, neuroscience generally is a specialty sales position, right? So not always, because there definitely are some products that are sold into primary care, but generally, neuroscience products are generally sold into psychiatrists or institutions that psychiatrists work in, like community mental health facilities or psychiatric hospitals, inpatient or outpatient. But generally, neuroscience is our products that are generally sold into psychiatrists. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And now with everything going on in the economy, everything going on with the pandemic we're all working through, what is a day in the life of a pharmaceutical sales rep now? Speak from a pharmaceutical sales rep perspective and then from a management perspective.
Yeah, during COVID,
during COVID,
since the pandemic has gone on. Yeah. So, I mean, we do our best to make it as much like our old life, if you will, as possible. But nowadays, representatives are making their sales calls via Zoom and via the phone and reaching out via email or text. So everything has sort of gone virtual, right? So, nowadays my reps are making the same amount of, sales calls they were before, anywhere from 7 to 9, but obviously doing that from home and with the goal of reaching out virtually and getting as many virtual Zoom appointments as possible with these folks and presenting, via their sales presentations, via Zoom through their iPad assets that we call them.
Right.
Reaching out that way now.
Excellent. And what would you say is the biggest, if there is one, and be as honest as you can, what would you say the biggest advantage is to the environment we're working in now with having to do everything through Zoom?
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage is actually getting in front of healthcare professionals that we weren't able to actually before. So psychiatry's been sort of on this telemedicine track for a while. I think they were kind of ahead of the curve in that sense. Mm-hmm. Just because the nature of that specialty, you don't necessarily always need to be doing vitals on a patient or seeing them in person, right? So they had flexibility to be able to do telemedicine in the past, and a lot of, and honestly, because of budget as well. So a lot of, community, county or state type of clinics were already bringing in psychiatrists, on a screen versus in person, so that they could be anywhere and hire them in at a lower rate. So they've sort of been there. So, but that presents a challenge for us to get in front of those folks, right? So if you've already been, on telemedicine and, you're not physically sitting in an office, we really can't reach you very easily. So, with the pandemic, actually, we've been able to get in front of more of these telemedicine doctors. I think that we've changed in the way we approach physicians, but also these healthcare professionals have changed their kind of acceptance to do Zoom or to meet folks virtually has changed as well. So we've actually been able to get in front of a lot more folks that in the past had been more challenging.
That's excellent. Do you feel that it's going to go back to the way it was as we get under control, or do you think this is going to create some more permanent ways of doing business?
Yeah, I think both. I think, it'll probably go back to, the in-person being, primarily the way we see folks. But I do think that, this virtual environment that we're in will stick around for a long time. I think it's just so convenient. Like I said, there was a learning curve that had to happen. We spent that first month, us learning ways to have impact virtually, but also our physicians and our healthcare professionals, whoever they're, physicians or staff or anyone, just getting accustomed to the virtual environment. Imagine a community mental health clinic. They're not exactly running on, the latest computer system or have one at all, right? So we had to find ways to get that going, or they had to find those ways. So they're accepting of it. So I could definitely see, I think that the immediate future is probably a hybrid of both. I think everyone will go back to some sort of in-person and virtual. And then I think long-term, this virtual environment will stick around for a long time. It's something that I think in pharma, we've been talking about doing for a long time. Right. But now that it's here, I think it'll stick around.
Nice. Okay. So take us back to why you got into pharmaceutical sales. When you were little, what was the dream?
When I was little, I think I wanted to be an astronaut, just like a lot of other kids. But I think a little bit later on, I wanted to get into law. I went to college with the idea of going to law school. Okay. And I interned, long story short, for a lot of lawyers, and then found out pretty quickly that I didn't want to be a lawyer, and that helped kind of focus me. But also, I was a little bit lost, so I decided to try to go into a career in sales. I had a lot of friends that had gone into sales, working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and other sales jobs, some with financial companies. Had a friend that worked for Xerox, so I actually ended up taking a job with Xerox, which is a highly competitive outside sales environment, just to see if I liked it. And that was really the purpose. Is like, if I can hack it at Xerox, then I'll make some money. I can learn about sales. They had a great training program, and then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And turns out I loved it. I did really well at it at Xerox, and loved the environment there. Had a great mentor there that had worked in a variety of sales jobs for many years, and kind of took me under his wing and taught me the ropes. And while I was there, as much as I loved, the thrill of a copier sale, it wasn't exactly what I imagined the rest of my life being. I just needed a little bit more purpose, but I did love sales. So, I started to look into, and I had several friends, pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies frequently recruited from Xerox. I had a number of friends that had moved on into that industry and got to know what they were doing a little bit. Went on a couple ride days, which I suggest if you're ever able to make that happen to really see the day in the life of someone in pharma. I just loved it. My father at the time had diabetes and type 2 diabetes, and there was 2 diabetes companies that had posted, so I applied for them and ended up getting one of those jobs within Johnson & Johnson. Nice. At the time and went in. So for me, it was about matching what I thought I was really good at the time, which was sales. I loved it. The thrill of getting in front of people and persuading them, if you will. I guess it's related to the passion I had about going into law at the time, but also putting purpose behind it and working for a company that I felt had kind of the same passion for patients and for really making a difference in the world.
Wow. And then you also had this personal reason, this connection because of diabetes in the family. Did that really, I mean, I'm sure that came up in an interview or came up when you talked about why you want to get into the industry.
Yeah, it did. Absolutely. And I think, you don't even have to have a necessarily personal connection, but I did. Sure. Yeah. And definitely, for me, diabetes was something I was interested in learning more about, for my family and also making a difference in, because I saw the effect that it had with my father and others in my family. So for me, it was a pretty easy conversation on kind of my purpose going into diabetes, but also, going into specifically the company I chose to go into, which
Right.
I felt, really innovated in that space and really had a pretty clear purpose in everything it did, and specifically in diabetes.
Right. And then you were in the diabetes area for a little while, right? For about 12 years. Is that
Yep.
accurate? So
About 10 years. Mm-hmm.
10 years. And you had good experience as a representative. When did you make that transition into leadership?
Yeah, so like most pharmaceutical reps that have a desire to go into leadership, I was in a management development program for quite a while. I was a field sales trainer
Sure.
for a long time, and I went through a couple different operating companies within my greater, larger operating companies. So I got to work for a couple different divisions and got involved with training. I actually went back in-house and worked in our sales, learning, and development department, so the training department. Training new hires, developing content for, product launches and,
Wow.
and all the different things that we did. So I went back in-house to do that for a couple of years with the intention of developing myself to come out as a district sales manager, so that I could be a more well-rounded leader.
Okay. So, and I like
Mm-hmm.
that because you've seen it all, in my opinion, as far as what it means to be a sales rep and what it means to be a leader. So when you think about, just being the ultimate sales rep, what are 3 qualities you say have to be there from what you've seen that make an excellent pharmaceutical sales representative?
Yeah, I'll see if I can come up with just 3, but I think, the one that I interview for a lot these days is someone that's very collaborative. I'll start with that. Maybe it's not the most important,
Sure.
but these days you have to be someone that collaborates really easily and seamlessly. The environment we work in now, there's lots of different layers within a pharmaceutical territory, sales territory, and you're usually not alone either. I think the days of sort of that lone wolf, pharma or even medical device sales position is kind of gone. So folks really have to be able to collaborate well together, and honestly, you get more out of your territory or whatever you're trying to sell if you're able to work with someone else that has, and understand your different strengths and utilize those to get in front of the customers and get, things done. So I think collaborating seamlessly, I think, we frequently think about someone that's a salesperson as someone that is good at talking, right? Just to make it simple, right? Someone that's just a slick talker, right? But the reality is I think one of the most important things is being a good listener.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that's really able to listen, and it comes down to customer needs, right? It's the basics in sales. How are you able to understand your customer needs in order to, present your product solutions in a better manner? Mm-hmm. So I think people that are really good listeners, right? If you can sit, Samuel, if you've sat in a sales call before as an observer, mm-hmm. you see it all the time, right? There's so many things that are missed that we've had the tendency to want to present and not listen. So those that are like the best listeners, that are more connected to their customers, I think that translates even further, outside of just a sales call. Mm-hmm. Those people are naturally someone that's going to look into what's important to a customer, what's important to their organization, what are the goals of this organization. What are the goals of the organization and then the payers even that they work with, right? So that you're able to put all those things together to when you have the opportunity to get in front of someone, really bring value. So I think that those are the top 2 things. And I think the last one is just being resilient. I mean, these days you just have to have always, right? A sales job is a job that you have to have thick skin in, right? Yeah. And it's just reality. You're going to hear no. You're going to people are not going to want to see you, right? So if that's something that deters you, then it's not the industry for you. Right. And so that's definitely important. And I think, that because you have to have that self-motivation to wake up every single day optimistic and looking to achieve your goals for that specific day and not be deterred by the no's or the access issues that you're going to have. It's just a fact of life now that access is tough. Mm-hmm. For the way, health systems are being consolidated, the way IDNs are now organized, there are, these elements of anti-pharma, anti-medical device. Right. So you get a little bit of restricted access. So you got to be resilient. You got to be able to bring value, and you got to work well with others.
No, that's well said. That actually makes me think when it comes to getting into a pharmaceutical sales position, I mean, some of those things you can bring into it, right? Resiliency, for example. If you really want to
Mm-hmm.
get into the industry, you got to be resilient and go through the interviews and experience some no's and figure out ways to actually get in. What else would you say is important to consider if you're someone that wants to get into the industry?
Can you rephrase that, like beyond those three things that we talked about, or what exactly are you looking for?
Yeah, in this question, I'm looking for more, what is it about people that you interview that you believe, what do they need to have so that you believe they're ready to actually get a pharmaceutical sales position or ready to work with your team?
Yeah. I mean, if they can demonstrate those kind of three things we just talked about, I mean, those three things are obviously really important, right? So, and it's easier if someone's been in the industry or some sort of sales job to be able to demonstrate those three things. I mean, those are the big ones. And the benefit to me, what makes my job easy as district sales manager interviewing people, is that the interview is like a similar situation that they'd be in front of a customer, right? So with the product being them, right, and I'm the customer, right, I'm the healthcare professional. So even though it's extremely important, they demonstrate, the kind of basics of the job, how their skills and experiences match the job description, right? That's simply that. It's also how they, ask me questions and how they interact and present themselves as a product, if you will, that to me, I'm looking for as an example of how they're going to show up in front of the customer. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it makes me easy. I'm not interviewing engineers, right? I don't have to see their CAD designs or whatever else they do in an engineering firm. Right. I get to listen to how they present, and that's how they're going to show up in front of the customers, most likely. So that's it. I think, yeah, there's a few things in that. So you don't have to have pharmaceutical sales experience, but what you do have to have, I think, are examples of how you do fit what the job is going to require and be successful, in the short term. Because I think, there's a risk, if you will, in hiring someone, especially if they don't have direct pharmaceutical sales experience. Right. But it's like someone took a quote unquote risk on me, but I had demonstrated, success in something else that I was able to give examples of to show how I was going to translate that into a successful career in pharmaceuticals and medical devices, right? So you got to, minimize that risk, if you will, with those great examples. Does that answer your question? That does, and it actually makes me come up with another one. So when it comes to mitigating that risk and seeing something that person is bringing to the table that makes you feel confident they can do the job, are there specific careers that typically stand out to you, or does it really not matter as long as they've performed in whatever that career was? Yeah, I'd say it's more so on to that second point. I think it's less what the career is and more about their skills and experiences in that and how they're able to communicate that to me. So it's more so about that. I mean, it's a lot easier. It's more rare to hear someone that was in something that's not a sales position, to be able to communicate that, but that's not the case. I work with people now that didn't come from a traditional sales job that came into pharmaceuticals and are successful at it. So, but yeah, I think more so it just depends on how, you're able to take those experiences that you learned and put them into practice here. Sure. Short answer, but I mean, it definitely is, the thing about this job, a pharmaceutical sales job, it is very independent as well. So, you do want to cut your teeth, right? Is this really what you want to do? Because, I'm not with you, 5 days a week, primarily sitting next to you in a cubicle, doing sales calls with you, right? You're really on your own, and you're out there, doing it. So you have to be really self-motivated, someone that's, like I said, resilient, that has that drive to be able to want to go out there, do it, and also to continuously improve too, because there's a lot that changes consistently in our industry. So you got to be focused and you got to be resilient. You got to be willing to learn. So those things are more important. So someone that's a self-starter, but so you don't have to have a traditional sales experience, but it certainly does help, kind of weed yourself out to say, do I really want to be a salesperson? Sure. Well, that's important. Mm-hmm. And then when you think about the transition you made from sales rep to manager, what were the biggest differences that you saw? And when I say that, I mean, I'm sure even before you became a field trainer, you had some idea of what you thought management was going to look like. And then now that you're in management, it's like, wait a minute,
what were some of those things that kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, surprised you?
We have a pretty good program here. I don't know if there was anything that surprised. I think what surprised me, like whenever you're someone that's, in a learning to be a manager, if you will, there's certain scenarios they give you that you think there's no way that that's the reality of what it's like to, the type of situations you're going to get in, but they are. Right. I think but that's so surprised me is how accurate, I guess, some of my training was. Right. Yeah. Right. I think you definitely have those, but I think overall, being on the management side, I'm glad I went through that in-house side to give me like a greater, sort of 30,000 foot view perspective. Because I think that, I'm really the buffer, and any manager really is sort of the buffer between upper management. Any direct, first line leader like myself is that buffer between, upper leadership and those decisions that are made and then the actual feet on the street. Right. So, you have to translate that, and you are upper management. Right. So I think understanding sort of the decision making at a higher level, before coming into this level really helped prepare me, because I think without that, it would be a more adversarial sort of, take on it. Right. But I think that being able to take all that, the upper level strategy, decision making, and translating that specifically to my team, it's better. So I think what surprised me is, not much, if you will. It surprised me that there wasn't a lot that was surprising. But I think that, overall, like if you are someone that's looking to be a first line leader, trying to get as many, you can't simulate having, a real team. It's very difficult, right? So even when I was a sales trainer, I was working with new people primarily, or people that were just receptive to training. And that's different than being a coach of people that have been in this industry for 20 years, longer than I have. Yeah. Like you still have to coach and develop people, but you also have to motivate and inspire people regardless of how long they've been with the company. So It's hard to simulate that when I'm a field trainer, right? Everyone's, when they come to me, they're either new or there's something specific that we're working on that I've been assigned to. So, just getting as much, increasing that knowledge base as much as possible. I think I'm still learning a lot. Everyone always is, but on what it takes to do that.
Sure. What would you say are one of the biggest challenges of being a manager?
It's your bandwidth. So just being strategic with your time. I mean, that's it. Just like every job, I think, to some degree, but really, I think, for everything that I just said. So where am I going to choose to utilize my limited time, with what I'm going to do? Right. Is it, to work with someone that's newer? Is it to spend more time with some of my tenured reps, understand their needs? Is it, sitting down and blocking out my calendar to do business planning? Is it, connecting with different partners, and how often should I do that? So it's just that allocation of time and my own personal resources, which I think is one of the biggest challenges that everyone sort of runs into. So that's it. And I think, I think the bigger decision making on strategy, I think that's the kind of where I need to spend my time, right? To motivate and inspire people, making sure we're on the right track. And kind of that check-in is like, when do we abandon certain strategies or tactics that we're on? Right. I think that's something that every district manager kind of thinks about is what are our check-ins, what are our kind of leading indicators of our success, and when do we kind of cut bait and go after a new strategy rather or stick with things. It's kind of easy to in pharma, where your numbers run quite a bit behind. It's easy to look at short-term results and decide to make a different decision. So those are kind of the decisions you're weighing.
Got it. Now I know that, some managers, they've just been trained so well by the company, they really haven't sought out or felt they needed any additional training. And I know some managers that, they spend a lot of time looking for different resources to help develop their skill sets. Where do you fall?
No, I mean, I think you have to constantly be learning, right? So, I work with both. I mean, I work with some folks that have been managers for 30 years that are constantly learning. People that are 30 years that they're still, talking about the kind of the philosophy that they learned 25, 30 years ago. Sure. Right. So, and it works for them. Right. So it just depends on what you like. I mean, I definitely, I'm one of those that's a learner. Right. So, I like to learn from other leaders and understand what their philosophies are, what books they're reading, what's inspired them and led them to be great leaders as well, and kind of learn from them.
Excellent.
So I definitely am on the constant learner, but I think, with that, it's what you can apply, right? So you only have so much bandwidth. So if you're constantly learning and you're not applying, you're not really learning, right? So
right.
So there's sort of a balance to it, but I definitely like to know what's made other people successful.
Excellent. So let me ask you this: what about, earlier you talked about how you kind of got to get up and want to go do it. Like you're driven. You have to have your purpose behind you. And you in your career, you've really been after it. You put yourself into a company, right from Xerox. You performed well. You went into field training. You performed well. You went to management. Continue that. What is it that consistently driving you now? Why do you even push to get these things done and be successful in your career?
Yeah, I think, for me, what sort of started me out in my career, which was a passion for, I see pharmaceuticals and what I do now. I'm in neuroscience, right? So my father was bipolar as well, committed suicide.
Wow.
And, that's the reason I wanted to get into the neuroscience side of the company that I work for now. So, I really see us in the commercial side. So, sales, marketing as the advocates for the researchers, right? Those that came up with these products really to help people, right? So
yeah.
We're the voices of them. We pick that sort of mission, that purpose up, once it gets approved by the FDA, and take that out into the streets and get it to the hands of the doctors to use for the right patients, right? So that's what drives me every single day. Every single day that I wake up, I'm out there for ultimately the patients that use the product. So pretty easy for me to do that. But as a manager, regardless of the products we sell, why I wanted to get into management is because I really do deeply care about the success of everyone, right? So that are my under my supervision, if you will. But I want them to have, I'm lucky enough to work with a really dedicated group of individuals like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm really dedicated to their development, to their motivation and inspiration in doing what we do every single day, for them to get the most out of themselves and their careers. I mean, that's really what I'm here for too. So that's what I spend a lot of time on, those kind of two things.
Wow. No, that's excellent. It's wonderful to hear that you have such a important passion behind why you do this. Okay, so you've been in the industry now for what, about 14 years? Is that accurate, Dino?
Yeah, in sales or pharmaceutical med device for about 13 years.
13 years. So talk to us a little bit about the med device part of your career. When was that, and what were you doing? Yeah,
that was actually at the beginning of my career. So I sold a medical device that was a blood glucose meter. So it's a medical device. It was sold like a pharmaceutical, though. So
got it.
Even though the sale itself was, the selling of a medical device. So there was not as clinical trial driven, if you will.
Sure.
More product feature driven. It was actually prescribed like a pharmaceutical, but then after that, I moved over and sold insulin pumps, which was more of a traditional medical device side. And that actually was a really rewarding, different type of sale. That for selling insulin pumps, you actually go and meet with patients, and at the time, and the laws have changed a little bit, but you would actually go and meet with actual patients that you were HIPAA cleared, that were interested in getting an insulin pump. So you'd work with the medical, with the healthcare professional, usually an endocrinologist, that would narrow it down to 1 or 2 insulin pumps. And if it was yours, they'd arrange a time for you to meet with the patients to go over your insulin pump and really sell the patients themselves on why they should choose your insulin pump over your competitors as well. So
wow. What was that style of back then? What was that style of sell like compared to what you normally do?
Normally do now, or well, now, I mean, vastly different, right? So, this is, it's, a pharmaceutical sale is very indirect, right? So,
right.
And to some degrees, you're almost like a tool salesman, that you're really selling a tool for a physician to use. So you're talking about the appropriate patients for them to choose, who they choose now, their own treatment algorithm, why they choose, your product or products that are in your category, and how you can kind of expand that utilization, right? Especially, and you use a lot of, obviously, clinical data to do that, and paint some patient stories, but ultimately then they leave you and then they go and go into that patient room and then make their own decision from there. You're not sitting next to them, right?
Right.
So that sale is like it's directly with the patient. So there's you're going to get it's a sale, but it's also it's much even more consultative. I mean, it is a consultative sale in pharma, but these people are choosing an insulin pump for themselves or for their child, right? So you really have to take a step back and understand what they're looking for. It's more like you're like the I don't want to say a car salesman, but it is more like a car salesman sell that what they're really looking for, what their budget is. I mean, there's cost involved. What their kind of goals are for this. For example, that product was waterproof, and some of our competitors weren't. Right, what their lifestyle is.
Right.
And then tailoring. I mean, it all ends up being the same, right? What are the features of your product? What are the benefits that it's going to provide for this patient?
Sure.
Specifically, but definitely just a lot more direct, right? So it's a whole different game.
Wow. So you've been in the industry now for about 14, 15 years. What's on the horizon for you? I mean, I know you can't lay out your entire plan right here, right now, but what do you looked towards leadership when you were a sales rep. What do you look towards doing now?
So I mean, being successful in this role. So I mean, there's a lot that I'd like for my team to achieve here in this geography that I'm in charge of now, for all those personal reasons that I talked about before.
Right.
So I think there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity we still have to help patients. So I'm extremely dedicated to that in the short term, and ultimately I would like to be involved in other parts of our organization, in the marketing department. There's many different arms there, but I'd love to get into marketing and be part of the decision making on the messaging and some of the resources that we bring to the field in order to be more effective. And ultimately, I'd take other leadership positions within our organization as well, regional director and those types of positions. But for right now, just really laser focused on this specific geography and the kind of the launches that we're going through currently.
Excellent. All right, now I'm going to ask you a all-encompassing question. Considering where you are in your career today and going back to right after you worked for Xerox, what would you have told yourself to do? What advice would you have given yourself that you didn't know then that you know now?
That's a good question. I think looking back, I would have made my career decisions based more on building skills and experiences than I did. Meaning, moving from like some of those career moves I made were more about the products I was selling or what I thought was going to be interesting at the time, which was fine. Mm-hmm. But I look at myself now and I look at still some of those gaps in my experiences that I'm still filling in, maybe in different types of institutional selling, as an example, different therapeutic areas. I stayed in diabetes for a long time, which I loved, I had a passion for. But there are different, elements of this industry that I could have learned a little better to be more effective now, right? So I think that I would have gone after different types of experiences and skills in the roles that I was going after versus just going after role to role based on, what I thought was just interesting at the time or what opportunities presented right in front of me at the time. I would have taken a step back to kind of see the bigger picture a little bit more and made those decisions based on how am I going to build, my overall skill set and my overall knowledge of this industry, knowing now that I've been in it for this long and I'm probably going to stay in it for the rest of my career as well.
Right. No, that's good. That's very insightful. Yeah. Okay. And then what would you share with the audience for two audiences? For those that are wanting to get into pharmaceutical sales, what would you share? And then also for those that are already in pharmaceutical sales, what would you share?
Yeah, for those wanting to get in, it's a little bit of what we talked about before. So, you are selling yourself, right? So why do you want to get into pharmaceutical sales, right? It's probably like if you Google, what questions you're going to get asked in a pharmaceutical sales interview, I bet that's the first one.
Right.
So, I'm surprised how many times I don't get a great answer to that. And that's okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be a sterling perfect answer in my book. I mean, for some maybe it does, but you know, have that, you know why you want to get in, and ultimately when you get to that interview, you're really selling yourself, right? So if you don't have those kind of skills and experiences as you read the job description, think to yourself, how can I get those? Or maybe how can I work with someone, some sort of you know, consultant or someone that knows this industry to kind of coach me up to build some of those competencies that are going to be required in that role, right? Because ultimately, if you don't have that traditional sales experience or pharma experience, you're going to have some sort of way that you're able to communicate how you have the competencies to do the role and have speed to impact, right?
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately what it is.
Got it.
So that's number one for those that haven't been in it. So, you know, read some great books, work with a consultant, you know, work with someone like yourself to, you know, learn about what the pharmaceutical sales interview is like. Like I said before, the interview is like the job, right? So you are the product, right? So, you know, you can coach up and learn how to sell the product also, but you also need to maybe improve the product as well, right? Make sure the product itself is ready for the job. So like I said, work with someone like yourself, get into, you know, read up on it, you know, some books about selling, some sort of sales philosophy that either you believe in and have used, or one that you plan on using that you've heard from others is successful, right? Something like, you know, Integrity Selling is a great book. I think that applies, you know, has applied for a long time, but also applies to pharmaceutical sales specifically. So that's number one. I think people in the industry, I mean, it's easy to become stagnant, right? And stop developing yourself, right? So I think that's number one. That's what I challenge my team to do all the time is being focused. Like I mentioned before, you don't have to be someone, you don't have to be you have to be a constant learner, but you also have to be a constant applier, right? So that's what I always focus on with my team. And we can learn a ton of things, but what we're going to learn, but what can we focus on with our learning that we can actually apply? And let's pick up a few things and just really try to do them versus trying to learn everything. But you have to be a constant learner. So think about yourself. Either if you don't want to move on into management or sales training or marketing or anything, that's fine. But how can you refine your skills as a salesperson to become more effective in front of your customers, and also even to take those skills and experiences and translate them and help your colleagues? I think that's the other way you can kind of keep fresh. There's going to be, you know, you're going to always have new teammates. You're going to have new you know, requirements for your job. I mean, pharma, just anyone that's been in pharma, you know, they know that that there's always a realignment around the corner. There's a reorganization, a new product that you're going to have to sell, right? So you're going to have to learn that anyway, but you also have to always focus on yourself as well and your personal development alongside of all the product stuff that you got to learn and all that as well. So don't become stagnant.
Excellent advice. Thank you for that, Dino. Well, Dino, it was wonderful having you on the show. You gave us a lot of insight, some understanding from how to get in, to being in, to even how to lead. And we sincerely appreciate it. Thank you for being with us, Dino.
Yep, you got it. Thank you, Samuel. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Talk to you soon. And that was Dino Lourenco. What I really like about Dino is he has a lot of experience. He's fully experienced the sales rep life. He knows how to see it through a sales rep's eyes. He's immersed himself in training, so he knows how to train what a sales rep should know and demonstrate and execute. And now he's a leader that understands how to lead. So he really has that 360 view on being successful, whether you're getting into the industry or you've been in the industry or you're trying to transition into leadership. And it's great to get perspective and insight from someone like that. You know, some things we went over in this interview were the importance of listening skills. And I love how he tied it to the actual interview for someone that wants to get a position, and how important it is they need to demonstrate that they're a great listener, that they understand how to address a customer's need. You know, in an interview, you are the product, you are the service that's going to address your hiring manager's need for their team. So to understand how to sell that, to understand how to show that is critical, because if you can do that in your interview, then you're given, just like Dino mentioned, you're given the benefit of the doubt of being able to do that in front of a customer when you're on that team. And then of course, resilience, bringing value, and working well with others. These are all critical things to being an effective pharmaceutical sales rep. Another thing that I like that Dino mentioned is, if you're really trying to figure it out and you want to get a position, then look into getting coached. I think it's invaluable, and I think it's part of the game. It's part of understanding how to make the best steps to get the result you want to get the fastest. So again, if you're someone that wants to get into the medical sales space, whether it's medical device sales, pharmaceutical sales, genetic testing sales, dental sales, you name it, if it's connected to medicine, then you need to make sure you visit evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain a Medical Sales Role, and look into the Medical Sales Career Builder Program, designed to help professionals get the positions they want in the medical sales space. And if you're someone that's looking to improve their performance, maybe you've had a year where it hasn't gone quite the way you wanted it to, or you've been a decent performer and you're saying, you know what, I know there are things I can learn that will take my performance to the next level, then again, make sure you visit evolveyoursuccess.com and select improve sales performance, and let's have a conversation and see how we can get you to where you want to go. As always, I do my best to bring you guests that you can learn from, that you can get understanding from and insight, not only into the fields that they work in, but into how to operate within those fields. So thank you again for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and stay tuned for another fantastic episode next week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.